headline, UNC co-ed found dead in her off-campus apartment.
There's what? There's blood everywhere.
I don't know of anyone that I've ever met that knew Faith had a problem with her. I mean, everybody just loved her.
I don't know what happened.
The note was left there. It's like, who leaves a note at all? Like, why would they even do that?
Was this the killer leaving a hint behind? And if so, how bold, how brazen, how arrogant?
There's too many unanswered questions.
Who would want to do this to her?
Her family sent her off to college with the dream of her reaching her dreams, but it actually turned out to be their nightmare.
Friday morning, September 7th, 2012. At an off-campus apartment, University of North Carolina student Karina Rosario comes home after spending the night with a friend.
Dial 911, where is your emergency?
I just walked into my apartment and my friend was just like unconscious.
The victim is 19-year-old Faith Hedgepeth, also a UNC Chapel Hill student.
Okay, you say your friend is unconscious?
She's unconscious. I just walked in the apartment and there looks like there's blood everywhere.
This isn't how anyone thought it would end for Faith Hedgepeth.
She comes from a small community, but she has really big dreams.
Faith Hedgepeth grew up in a very small town called Hollister, North Carolina. It's a very small community. Under 1,000 people live there. And it has a Native American tribe, which Faith Hedgepeth is a part of, the Hallawasaponi tribe.
It's a very remote community, 20 to 30 miles from any town. Very little health care in the area.
Faith always wanted to be a pediatrician. She loved kids. She wanted to be a doctor.
Her goal was to move back to the tribal community and to make it more accessible.
My mom had just left my dad right after she was born, so I helped Mama a lot with her. She was kind of like my baby for all her life.
Faith was our baby sister, and my mom and my sister, they pretty much, raised her.
Faith was very involved in church activities, community activities, school activities. She wanted to make our community better.
She was a smart student, one of the top students in her school.
She has really big aspirations, and she ends up getting accepted to what the state considers is its flagship state institution, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Faith was always a Tar Heel fan. Our family we were Tar Heel fans.
I mean, we were a Carolina family. She just had it in her mind that she wanted to go to Carolina no matter wherever else she got accepted to, she wanted to go to Carolina.
My dad went to school there for a year, so she wanted to fulfill his dream also and finish.
As a result of all her hard work, she was awarded a Gates Millennium Scholarship, and that scholarship was a full boat ride all the way through grad school.
She loved Carolina.
It's funny because everybody I ended up meeting also knew her. Even if I randomly met someone else, if I mentioned her name, they also knew her. They had mutual friends through her, and they would all say the exact same thing, just nothing but positive things to say, just because of how she would treat you and how she treated other people.
She was beautiful, happy, and sweet, so I think guys were just naturally drawn to her and attracted to her.
Faith attracted plenty of male attention at college, but had a high school sweetheart back home.
The last week of Faith's life, we actually spent a lot of time together, and she knew she still loved him and would eventually want to find a way for the two of them to work out their relationship and be together.
Juggling her part-time jobs, a busy social life, and her biology major is a challenge.
Adjusting from high school, small town, predominantly Native American communities, we both struggled with the academic rigor of UNC, but also just the cultural shock.
Anyone that went to UNC had a shock when they got there. Am I supposed to be here? Just because it is an adjustment from what you're used to.
Faith decided to take a break from academics. She did stay in Chapel Hill. Faith was working several jobs.
Her goal to always become a pediatrician, but she was starting to think maybe teaching might be a good profession for her.
When she got the news that she had gone back in school, she called me at work and she said, "Mama, I got back in." She was just so happy. I mean, she was just over the top of the moon, you know, as they say. But it was for a short time before everything happened.
I still remember it like it was yesterday.
I got a call from Connie. She said, "You need to come to Chapel Hill. They found Faith dead."
She called me, and the first thing that she said was that Faith's dead.
People were stunned, especially students. They go to school there with the expectation that they're going to be safe. You had a lot of UNC students that felt like, okay, if this can happen to her, am I going to be put at risk? Am I in danger?
4 years earlier, Eve Carson, UNC student body president, was murdered in an off-campus robbery.
People were trying to draw the connection between the two, and it was a very chilling effect because that happened just several years prior. And just like Faith Hedgepeth, Eve Carson was very popular on campus.
There's heartbreak everywhere. Each time I went back to Hollister to interview her family or interview people in the community, everyone was heartbroken. They couldn't believe what had happened. This young, beautiful, vibrant, loving, caring young woman is killed, and killed viciously. No one ever had a single negative thing to say about Faith. She was always described as someone full of light, someone who was willing to share that light, someone who was willing to help others.
We didn't know anything. I asked the questions. I asked, well, what happened to her? Did someone stab her? Did someone shoot her? What happened? They couldn't tell us.
Rumors, of course, started to go around the campus community. How did she pass away? What was the cause of death? Nobody knew that. So different rumors were going around.
We asked, could we go to the crime scene? Connie was begging, couldn't she go in the room where she was and just hold her hand? We knew she was still there. They hadn't removed the body.
They wouldn't let us go see her. I won't touch anything. I said, but she needs to know that I'm there, that, you know, her mom is there. She was all alone.
Faith spent her last night like many college students, a stop at the library, and then headed out to a popular night spot.
If you think about that night, if she's at a club, she's an attractive young girl. No doubt she had admirers in every corner of her life. So who did she encounter that evening?
UNC Chapel Hill students are about 3 weeks into classes of the fall semester. The college social life is already in full swing.
On September 6th, I saw Faith that day because we both went to an interest meeting for Alpha Pi Omega Sorority Incorporated. It was pouring down rain, and I just have this memory of her holding a Daily Tar Heel newspaper over her head, like running towards me in the rain. She let me know that she was going to be leaving early from the event because she wanted to spend a good amount of her evening in the library.
She met up with her friend, Karina Rosario, at the Davis Library on campus at UNC, where they could study and do some homework. They were there for a few hours. And then after that, they went back home.
She was staying with Karina temporarily because she was waiting for financial aid to come in to get an apartment of her own.
She told me, Karina said I could stay with her, you know, and it was going to be like for maybe 2-3 weeks, that's all.
Faith and Karina are back at Karina's apartment just long enough to change clothes and get ready to go out.
They went downtown, Chapel Hill, to a very popular club at the time, The Thrill. And what was popular about this club is that it allowed people under the age of 21, like Karina and like Faith, to hang out. and dance.
Because of its location being right off of Franklin Street, which is a hub of like Chapel Hill and student engagement. It's like where the town meets the campus, and it's just lively with a lot of restaurants and different things like that.
Video shows them going into the thrill at the same time, maybe talking to a bouncer on the way in.
That's where the evening takes a really dark turn.
Faith and Karina spend about 90 minutes at the thrill.
They supposedly left the thrill because Karina wasn't feeling well. That's what she told.
We've seen the videos of Faith and Karina leaving the club that night, talking to different people.
Karina goes out first with escorted by a guy with dreadlocks. Karina's standing outside talking very animated with her hands and stuff, like she's upset. About 20 seconds later, Faith walks out with a male also. She's got her hand on his arm, and she walks out the door, and looks like she sits down in the bouncer's seat right outside the door. Looks like the guy she's exits with is standing over to the side talking to her for a while. But they're away from Karina and what's going on with Karina. And I think there may be one or two other people come up to where Karina is and is talking with her.
We know that after they leave the nightclub, Faith and her roommate are back at their off-campus apartment.
Karina got sick, and Faith was helping take care of her.
The lady who lives downstairs is an elderly lady. This was the last night of the Democratic National Convention of the year. She had watched the convention and was staying up late listening to all the commentary. At about 2:40, 2:45, she heard 3 loud thumps upstairs, like a heavy book bag being dropped on the floor or maybe furniture being turned over.
Faith and Karina were both on their phones after they got back to the apartment. At about 3:40 a.m., a friend of both women, who had also been at the thrill that night, got a text from Faith's phone.
Hey, B, can you come over here, please? Karina needs you more than you know. Please let her know that you care.
When he responds 12 hours later, he's like, "Who is this?" Tells me that he didn't have Faith's contact in his phone.
A UNC student Faith dated her freshman year told her family he also got a text in those wee hours of the morning.
Got a strange text, and he told me that Faith was saying that she still loved him and she wanted them to get back together and things like that. He said, but I didn't understand where that was coming from. He said we had, seen each other and kind of connected a little bit, but we were just talking as friends.
Karina is also messaging friends, and at about 4:30 a.m., a male friend arrives downstairs to pick her up and take her back to his place.
She said she had just had the locks changed and that she only had one key, and that her and Faith had some kind of system with this key. She said Faith went to bed and she left the door unlocked.
The morning of Friday, September 7th, 2012, Faith Hedgepeth isn't answering her phone. Faith had been staying at her friend Karina Rosario's apartment, but Karina left early that morning, about 4:30 a.m., and spent the night with a male friend.
Karina says that she was reaching out to Faith, maybe to see if she could pick her up from where she was staying overnight, and she could not reach Faith.
She eventually calls a friend of theirs, Marisol Rankle. They're all very close, well, from what I understand, real good friends. Karina asked Marisol to call Faith.
Marisol had trouble reaching Faith as well, so Marisol decides that, okay, I will pick you up, Karina, and take you back to the apartment, and then we can take you guys to class.
They see Faith's car still there, so they go up together, and they go in the apartment.
They open the door, and they're calling out for Faith, and she doesn't answer. They get to the bedroom, and that's when they discover this gruesome crime scene.
Faith is unresponsive. Her clothing is disheveled. She's naked from the waist down, and she's been beaten.
There's blood everywhere.
Marisol says she was the first one who saw Faith. And they're both trying to unlock their phones or whatever, and Karina gets hers unlocked first and calls 911.
I just walked into my apartment and my friend just and she's unconscious.
What is your name?
Karina. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry.
It's okay, honey.
It looks like someone had been in there because she's not like this at all. I don't think you sure there's something.
Yes, ma'am. They are on their way.
I just can't believe this. No, someone had to have been in there.
There is no forced entry. Karina says she left the door unlocked when she left. It doesn't appear to be a burglary. The apartment complex did not have security cameras.
You go to a crime scene and then you see evidence, and then you start putting the case together through the victim. You look at the victim and go outwards, and that's how the cases always start. Who would have the motive? Who would have the opportunity? And who would have the ability to commit this crime?
Because I was texting her, I had to go through the process. Any friends who communicated with her or had anything to do with it also went through the process.
I was kind of shocked immediately, maybe in disbelief, didn't really know what to think. Was it random? Was it somebody we know?
I had a concern with every ex-boyfriend or anybody who was in Faith's life, but everybody was suspect to me.
Police find an ominous and baffling piece of evidence at the bloody crime scene. A handwritten note.
That is the most interesting part of this whole investigation, is that you have blood everywhere, on the closet, spattered on the walls, on the bed, on the floor. But then you have this takeout bag with this, note, threatening note on it, and there's no blood on it.
I'm not stupid, bitch jealous.
It's written in such a way that, is reminiscent of a horror film. If a horror movie had to have a font, this is what it would look like.
Someone was jealous of her because that word is explicitly used on the note.
First of all, who leaves a note? Who's the note left for? I mean, why you wouldn't leave it for the dead person, because they can't read it. So is it a message left for someone else, or is it just a red herring, something left to throw people off?
I don't know who wrote the note. I do know that it didn't have any blood on it, but it was right there on the bed where all the blood was. So somebody put it up there after she died.
The fact that it was placed there, almost like a hood ornament to kind of punctuate the killing after the killing was done, and especially the way the Faith's body was left, in the position she was left, which it indicates that there's a total disregard to her. It didn't impress me that it was a killing where the suspect had to run out of there quickly if he had enough time to put the bag there.
People were just kind of looking at the fact that these two girls were UNC students, they were popular, they were very socially active, and they're very attractive. And clearly they attracted the attention of men, and perhaps some of those men didn't have their best interest at heart.
My instant thought, of course, was some guy has had their feelings hurt by her, like maybe she blew somebody off. She is beautiful and sweet and funny, and if she turned you down, of course you would probably have your feelings hurt. I can't imagine the level of anger it took to hurt her that way.
I would have these times where I'm just analyzing every day, every day of that week, every person that she's mentioned to me. I'm replaying all these things in my head because all the little details matter. And a big thing I was always wondering is why? Because I can't ever figure out the why.
I kind of had an idea of the brutality of her murder at the wake or viewing of the body. Her family made the decision to leave her casket open to show people the level of brutality. She had some bruising on her face, and her hands had defensive wounds and things like that on them.
In addition to the note, investigators say they have another key piece of evidence left at the scene: the killer's DNA. Police investigating Faith Hedgepeth's brutal murder want to speak with everyone in her inner circle, including her friend Karina Rosario. Faith was staying with Karina for a couple of weeks until her scholarship money came through and she could rent her own place. Karina made the 911 call.
Okay, honey, listen to me. Okay, all right. listen to me. When you touched her, how did she feel? Does she feel warm?
No, she feels cold.
She feels cold? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Don't touch anything else, okay? Don't touch anything else.
Hurry.
Karina has been under intense scrutiny. There's a lot of online chatter, pointing fingers at her. But Chapel Hill police say that they have interviewed her at least 10 times, and she's been cooperative.
Karina was had become like a daughter to me, okay? From going through and visiting, I just grown to love her like my own daughter. I figured if Faith liked her, she must be a good person.
Karina's ex-boyfriend, Eric Takoy Jones, is also on police radar. Faith had helped Karina get a restraining order against him. Karina claimed he was abusive towards her, and she wanted him to stay away from her apartment.
He's also someone who might have had access, given the fact that he was living in the same apartment complex as Karina.
Police get warrants to search Karina's ex's vehicle and apartment. He also gives a sample of his DNA. The search warrants reveal a friend of Faith's told police that before she died, Faith told her Karina's ex had threatened her.
He had very conflicting behavior. He wasn't very fond of Faith because she was interfering with his relationship. And then, right after the murder, they've got him on tape during interviews talking in glowing affection for her on what a great person she was.
I'll be honest with you, whoever did this deserves to burn. But from what I knew of her, she was the sweetest person in the world. If you needed her and she could do it, she was there.
Chapel Hill is basically UNC Chapel Hill. The campus is so big and it is so popular, and it really brings out the community. So you have students there, of course, but you have people from surrounding areas, Raleigh, Durham, that like to, converge on the campus, especially Franklin Street, where there are so many bars and restaurants.
She was popular. She knew people on campus, off campus. Who could she have encountered? And it's any number of people.
They also find semen on Faith, and that is important DNA that they use to try to track down who may have done this.
Police search warrants reveal investigators sought DNA samples from several men known to have had contact with Faith that night. A man who exchanged texts with Faith, a man who'd been at the Thrill, and whose cell phone records placed him near Faith's apartment. They also sought DNA from the man seen on surveillance video walking out of the club with Faith.
At that point, everybody's a suspect, including us. And I was asked to come to Chapel Hill and give a DNA sample.
Faith had a very big social circle, so they were trying to figure out who may have had ties to her. So they were talking to people at the Thrill nightclub, people that she came into contact with there, a lot of her close friends. Faith was a very popular and well-liked individual and very attractive, so there were a lot of guys that seemed to be around her. So they did DNA swabs on a lot of those men.
1,800 interviews, I think they did. Approximately 100 people submitted to DNA tests, either voluntarily or through a search warrant.
Eric Takoy Jones, Karina's ex-boyfriend, gave a DNA sample
some limitations that they put on themselves, let alone the fact that they probably don't deal with a lot of homicides like this.
There's yet another puzzling potential clue from the night of Faith's murder. A voicemail to a friend from Faith's phone.
I began to think back and remember that in the early morning hours of September 7th, I got a few missed calls from Faith, and one of those calls left a voicemail on my phone. And so my thoughts went to, oh my goodness, what if that's important, or what if that matters? But I had already deleted it.
Faith Hedgebeth was beaten to death just a few weeks shy of her 20th birthday. Police say that they were able to generate a genetic profile of an unknown killer who left DNA at the scene, including semen on Faith's body. But police have yet to find a match to the unknown DNA, despite asking dozens of individuals for DNA samples. The likely murder weapon is still at the scene, covered in blood.
Faith was beaten with a rum bottle, a peach Bacardi rum bottle. She is beaten brutally.
She had about 3 or 4 gashes up in her forehead and the back of the skull. That's what killed her.
We knew that she had died from blunt force trauma. It doesn't do any justice to what was actually done to her until you actually see autopsy photos.
Details of the investigation aren't released until almost 2 years after Faith's murder. Seeing the evidence in the case, even the graphic photos, gives Faith's family some relief.
When I saw those pictures, I could see Faith. I could see my baby. You know, even though I saw some scarring and, like the gashes in her forehead and things like that, I could see Faith. I needed the answers. It was like a burden had lifted off me. I didn't look at every picture, but I'm just saying I saw her on that slab and I could see Faith.
There's another potential clue from that night, a voicemail from Faith's phone.
When I first listened to it, the reason that I ended up deleting it is because it sounds like music playing in the background for a bit, and Faith was notorious for the pocket dial. So this was not new behavior for her. So I assumed I was a random pocket dial because I was in her recent calls.
The unit told me about the voicemail probably early on, and but you know, she just indicated it was just garbled. She couldn't sound like music playing in the background. She couldn't make anything of it, and she had turned it over to Chapel Hill PD.
I actually called my cell phone provider to get information about how to retrieve a deleted voicemail, because I thought maybe I should get this to the police, maybe this is of importance. With recovering the voicemail, there's actually a deleted messages tab on the brand of phone that I had. So they walked me through finding that folder. I opened it and was able to restore deleted message.
I knew very well I could hear Faith. I could hear screams in the background. I know Faith's voice. I know her laugh. I could tell it among 1,000 people, and I knew her scream.
I definitely can hear what sounds like her voice and her yelling or screaming of some sort, but just like maybe someone trying to shout over the noise or something like that. You really can't hear or understand anything.
I think Faith is being attacked.
Chapel Hill police that say that it's likely that pocket dial took place at the Thrill nightclub. There's a lot of dispute on when that call actually took place.
According to Chapel Hill PD, they verified the timestamp.
We know the timestamps were off back then. My mom even has it on her phone. She and Faith were texting the weekend before. Faith was texting her while we were in church, and the times were showing up like a 3-hour difference. I believe that that voicemail is actually Faith being attacked, being murdered.
what I hear, I believe Faith is being attacked. There's been a lot of contention about it. You know, people have their own spin on it, whether they think I'm crazy or I'm right or wrong. I know what I hear.
Chapel Hill police say they're confident the timestamp, 1:27 a.m., was accurate and that Faith was still alive and well after the pocket dial was made from her phone. But they do have another tool that they hope will help them catch Faith's killer. There's no shortage of evidence in 19-year-old UNC student Faith Hedgepeth's murder. A note left at the scene, and what police believe is the killer's DNA.
That brief video of them exiting the club, which was, as far as I know, the last time you've seen Faith on camera alive anywhere. Then there's the voicemail. Did that happen when did she make that call when she was in the club, or did that really happen outside when she was, in the process of being murdered?
If the timestamp on the voicemail is correct, it was left at 1:27 a.m. while Faith was at the Thrill. Surveillance shows Faith and Karina leaving the nightclub at 2:06 a.m. At 3:40 a.m., after they arrived home, a text is sent from Faith's phone to a friend. Karina says she left the apartment around 4:30 a.m. and returned at 11 a.m. and found Faith's body.
This just seems so solvable.
It's a really strong case. We have an immense amount of evidence and literally many thousands of hours invested in this case. What we don't have is our suspect in hand just yet.
We definitely need to find out whose DNA that is. It was left in areas that do lead us to believe that that person was involved in Faith's homicide. That does not mean that that was the only person involved.
Chapel Hill police use a company called Parabon Nanolabs to generate a picture of a potential suspect using that DNA from the crime scene.
That sketch tells us with some levels of confidence, genetic ancestry, skin type, whether the person had freckles or not, eye color, hair color.
And they determined it was most likely a Hispanic, a Latino guy. DNA results reveal that this was a male that was involved in this crime. Doesn't mean that he killed her.
But what it doesn't tell us is age and height and weight, some of those very important traits that have too many environmental factors to determine from the DNA. It's not an exact replica of who we're looking for.
I recall reading those court documents, reading the details of the case, and thinking to myself, this person is in the wind. Whoever this person was that did this murder, they're gone.
We can't rule out the possibility that this police department knows who the killer is. They probably are still missing that one piece of evidence that would eliminate everybody else and lock it into one particular person.
The Faith Hedgepeth case echoes the murder of another North Carolina student less than 4 years earlier. Two men forced Eve Carson, the UNC student body president, out of her apartment. They made her drive to an ATM and give them access to her bank account, then shot her and left her body in the street.
There was a lot of comparison of Faith's case to Eve Carson's case. That in Eve Carson's case, the state immediately got involved. There was a concerted effort by multiple law enforcement agencies to identify her killers, and they were brought in a short amount of time. And as a journalist, during that period, you're hearing this scrutiny, you're realizing that the police department isn't really sharing a lot of information. You begin to wonder, has this case in some ways been jeopardized?
We need to protect young women, especially minority women. Our demographic, I think that happens to us a lot, where the resources just aren't really put where they should be. To me, there's too much there, too much evidence there for nothing to have happened.
I know that they have brought in outside agencies like the FBI, like this DNA lab, to really look at the evidence. They continue to say that this is not a cold case, that someone is always looking and examining this case.
In the spring of 2021, Chapel Hill PD are confident the murder would be solved.
Technology is advancing every day, and we continue to look at everything that's available to us.
I think it's really important for folks to understand this case has remained an active case since the day of the murder. Nothing has changed in that regard. The last couple of years, as some of our investigative approaches have changed a little bit and been informed around enhancements in DNA analysis, we've enlisted additional outside assistance. So from the beginning, the State Bureau of Investigation helped us.
But you got to remember, there's probably a limited amount of DNA and stuff like that to deal with. The smaller that remaining quantity gets, then they have to be very, very careful how they use it from that point on. You may use it all up before that one technology comes in that can solve it. You know.
I want to know all the answers. She was my baby too. As a mom, as a sister, I need to know what happened to her.
There's no question this case will be solved. I think we're as close to it today as we've ever been, and we look forward to having good news for our community and for Faith's family, hopefully soon.
I believe that they truly are working hard trying to find out who could have killed her, but it's been a long process. And you know what, we may not ever know who did it.
this is not the end of the story. As production on this program is nearing completion, a shocking announcement. On September 16, 2021, 9 years and 9 days after the murder of Faith Hedgepeth, Chapel Hill police say they have made an arrest.
We have a subject in custody for the murder of Faith Hedgepeth.
We have arrested Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares, age 28, of Durham. The arrest was made this morning without incident with the assistance of the State Bureau of Investigations. He's been charged with first-degree murder of Faith Danielle Hedgepeth.
I knew from the beginning that my DNA didn't match the DNA that they had, and they continued to let it go on for 9 years with me being dragged through the mud.
When Celisa called me today and told me that they had made an arrest, so my mind went, I went right back to September 12th, 2012, and I couldn't function, I couldn't think. It's been a long 9 years. The case is not solved. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. And but I want to thank God for that, and I want to thank Chapel Hill Police Department and all the agencies that assisted them up to this point for their diligence on this case. Okay, and I want to thank all our friends and family who support us these 9 years. It's an honor to be faced dead.
When I got the news this morning, I didn't do anything but cry and thank God and praise God, because I put it in His hands and it was His timing. I don't know why it took so long, but I just know that it was Him. And I just thank the Chapel Hill Police Department, the SBI, anyone that had a hand in helping to investigate this case. I just thank them for all their hard work and their labor paid off. When I cried, it was tears of joy, tears of relief, knowing that someone had been arrested in her case. And I believe it's going to be hard the next months and years maybe for this to be resolved, but I'm praying and asking God to please let it not be too long, that everything will be revealed that happened that morning of Faith's death.
Olivares would have been 19 years old at the time of the murder. His alleged connection to Faith Hedgepeth and a motive is still unknown.
This investigation is not complete. Our work is not done. We will continue to work this case until every lead has been extinguished and any parties that have a role in or knowledge of this tragedy are brought.
When I wake up and see these paintings, what goes through my mind, I just, it puts a smile on my face. She's never died in my heart, okay? She's very much alive. When I see the photos, they make it real, they make it still alive for me.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Saw you when